They'll try every dirty trick in the book to get back at you.
In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to reveal your identity.
I hope this is as close to hell as I'll ever get.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Warren Files Declassified. Today I'm going to share two different cases that I worked on in Peru, in Lima, the capital of Peru. I figure these are something a little more exotic, a little more interesting for you, and it's a special treat for our Patreon supporters. The first one I want to talk to you about is a residential case, but the other one takes place in an ancient fortress called Real Philipe, which is about 500 years old. Amazing place. So back to our first case. We were called in to a home by my regional director for services in South America. He's an archbishop up in Colombia. His name is Christian Piedrahita. He is an extraordinarily good man, a very holy man, of course. What would you expect from an archbishop? But I was recruiting a new team in Lima, two terrific men, Pedro and Francisco. And I had already gone out with them a little bit, gotten to know them, had an interview with them as well. And I felt that they would be very good to go on this case with me. We were told that it was a couple of women who were married. Both of them were married. They were sisters. And their daughters and a cousin who's also a young lady, as well as their brother, were all involved in this case. When their mother and father had been alive, there had been some problems. The mother had come under possession, supposedly, and would display physical abilities that the mother herself didn't have. She would be able to exercise. She was far stronger. Didn't know these people, didn't know the family, and was kind of belligerent. And they were terrified because they had also seen a figure of a woman walking. They had seen a man, and they were feeling very, very terrorized. When we arrived, we did not meet the brother. He didn't want to be there at the time. Although, weirdly, he was watching us on camera from where he was. And the cousin was not there at the beginning. But we started having a conversation. They were speaking to my team in Spanish, so my Spanish is not that great. And being the psychic of the team as well, that's another thing. Down there in South America, they just assumed that I was psychic, so they started asking me to use my abilities constantly. It was something I always tried to avoid in the United States and elsewhere. I mean, yeah, I've got them, but it wasn't something I was ever comfortable with. But I started walking around the whole house, and I recorded for myself in Spanish my notes. And I could feel around, and I couldn't feel anything in a lot of the rooms. Then I saw this picture of a young man, very distinguished looking, an old black and white photo, and I knew this was the father, and that he was the one haunting the house. I just knew it. And as I walked into the kitchen, I could feel another presence there. There was a woman there. Now, I didn't know anything about this case. That's important for you to understand. A psychic shouldn't know anything, and they shouldn't share with the families anything. They should share only with their team leader. In this case, that would have been Pedro and Francisco, who were running this investigation. But I could feel that there was a woman in the kitchen. It was a totally different presence. Nothing bad. As I walked into the hallway, there had been a tragedy right there, and I knew it. And then I went into one of the bedrooms. There was absolutely nothing there. Another bedroom, nothing. And they wanted me to go out into the garden, but I said, no, I'm going to save that for last. I don't know why, but I want to save that for last. As we were going up the stairs, I was feeling a lot of energy building. I got into this one room, and there were 2 beds there. And at the entrance of the room and on the other side of the beds, there was no feeling at all. But between the 2 beds, there was. It turns out that there was that was the one place where they felt attacked and that they were feeling oppressed and that they really had problems. And then there was a hallway on that second floor, and I knew yet another spirit had been left there. Now, this was only an impression. It wasn't an actual ghost. It was a residual haunting. And I found out that that's where a workman had suffered a heart attack and died. So as we went upstairs, I didn't feel anything at all. And we came back down. And that's when the woman came over to the bottom of the stairs where I had felt another tragedy had taken place. And she started telling us how this is where her father had a fit. And he had fallen and he was struggling and he died right there. And she felt tremendous guilt about this. She really felt that it was her fault and she should have done more. But the doctor had told her there was absolutely nothing you could have done. These were very elderly people. When we went out into the garden, I immediately was drawn to this lump of stuff that was covered with a tarp. I said, "What is this?" And they said, "Oh, no, it's nothing." I said, "Okay." This garden was extremely important to someone. Very important. This was their favorite place in the house. I said, "Yeah, it was our father's." I said, "Yeah, I thought so." "And this stuff right here, this was all of his stuff, wasn't it?" I said. And they said, yes, it was. This was a place where he felt most at home. And I'm walking around and there was one spot right there. Everywhere else I could feel the energy of him. It was important, but that one spot that I've been drawn to, we believe, the father had said that he had buried a human skull in the garden. Just a skull. Now there is a Peruvian tradition of taking a skull from a graveyard, but you put it in a box and you give offerings to it, and it's a way of protecting your home against robbers. And you have masses said for it and everything else. It's a little odd to me, but every culture is different. But to bury a skull, just the head, in an unmarked grave in your garden, that's not normal. I told them, all right, you need to dig that up. You need to get rid of that and bury it properly in consecrated ground. Then we went upstairs to the roof, and everyone joined us because, again, remember, the brother was watching, and they didn't want him to see what we were talking about. They were worried that he wouldn't agree or like it, what we were doing. He had been very, very paranoid about our visit, which is understandable, honestly. It turned out the woman who lived in the house was the most gifted. Her daughter, and the cousin, all very gifted psychics. But she also suffers from anxiety, crippling anxiety. So for her, everything that was in the home had to be evil, had to be the devil. Remember, her mother had supposedly come under possession. Her mother had been prescribed medication that was incorrect. And what had really happened, this had opened her mother up. Her mother was already a psychic as well. Remember, I've told you in the past, it is a genetic ability. And this had opened her up, and a human spirit had actually manifested through her. She had become a physical medium. She had had abilities her whole life. They all had. But this physical manifestation terrified the family because they didn't understand what they were dealing with. And once we explained that, it helped a lot. I helped them learn how to protect themselves. We talked about different steps they could take to cleanse the home, to relieve that negative energy that they felt was there. The woman that was in the house, she's not a family member. The human spirit woman. She's not a family member. It's somebody else. Now, the family is also justifiably afraid because the father had a second family, and he had tried to bring that woman and her children into the house and kick his first family out. Not a nice guy. But that didn't work. Now, they were afraid that maybe this family had cursed them and things like that. I didn't feel anything of that nature. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. I just didn't feel it. But there was nothing negative that had happened to anybody. Nothing terrible. One of the girls, the cousin, had been sitting one day and felt a spirit come at her and try to force itself into her, try to manifest, but she was able to force it away. It was a human spirit. She's a medium. And so we have all three of these women in our psychic support group, our Spanish-speaking psychic support group. And Pedro and Francisco are following up and helping them. We are trying to get the woman who actually lives in the house into some counseling because she needs it for her anxiety. Her husband is a wonderful older man. They're both in their 60s or 70s. And he's got cancer. And he has been struggling, but he has a wonderful outlook. And he just wants to enjoy his time with her while he can. And she's the one that's suffering. So we're trying to give them as much help as we can. We're also getting a priest in there because they are Catholic. And we're going to have them cleanse the house properly. And that should be enough once they get rid of that skull that's there. Now, the other case is Real Philipe, Fortress Real Philipe. And this was really, it's still a working military installation. Now we have some video for you. We're going to intersperse that in here. My producer is going to put that in for you where he feels it's necessary. I'm not sure where, so forgive me if all of a sudden it pops up while I'm talking. But there was one point, I knew nothing about this place. I didn't want to know the history. I didn't want to know anything, and nor did the team that brought me there. Another team that I'm working on recruiting into the foundation. But it's a beautiful, it's in the shape of a star, which is very common for the medieval ages. And each of the star points has a tower on it. One of them is the Tower of the Queen, one of them is the Tower of the King. Those are the two that I visited. We only had a few hours, and this is a big place. But a lot of this had been destroyed during a tsunami that had hit, and it had only been rebuilt by a military enthusiast about 150 years ago, after the government failed to really redo the entire thing properly. I mean, it had stayed in use and everything. It just never really got completely rebuilt. So I went over to this one tower near the Queen. I'm going to fix this. Forgive me. Went over to the tower known as the Queen's Tower. And as I'm walking over there, all of a sudden I'm drawn underneath the tower to this pillar. And the team says, "Did you hear your name called, Chris?" No. They all had heard my name called, but I was the one that was drawn over there. And there was a spirit of a woman there. I think it had been a place they had hid behind the column as a way of meeting with her lover. And they were still there. But I'd swear there was a woman here, not a man, which I wouldn't understand why. But it was almost like a hiding place, but not a bad hiding place. It was more of a let's meet here kind of place. she was talking to her lover up there. As we walked up this ramp to the Tower of the Queen, I could feel the marching soldiers that had been there for centuries and centuries and centuries. And near the entrance, I knew that a man had been killed. And the energy here is not good energy.
It's not.
No. I mean, it's human, but it's not good. It's heavy. It hurts my head. Right on top. Yeah, I'm guessing something bad happened to somebody right there. A murder? Or just, somebody killed in an attack of some sort? Now, there had never been a successful invasion of the fortress. I didn't know the purpose of this fortress other than, to protect Lima. But we walked to this, and it's built like a maze, the entire thing, to confuse invaders or escapees, it turns out. I didn't know this at the time. And there was this really tiny little corridor. I mean, very, very narrow. Like I had to move sideways to go into it. I'm a big guy. And it's shaped like a horseshoe. And there were these portholes about this big that were at about the 4-foot level and about a foot. And they ringed the inside of this horseshoe. So I'm walking this and I'm like, oh my God, there were so many people jammed in here. This was a place of absolute misery. This is horrifying. And there's a viewport right there. And I see this central room that looks at it. And they said this is where they kept the pirates that they captured. And they'd be shoved in here. And food would be shoved, bread and water would be shoved through those little holes in the wall. And the people, there was not enough room for them to lay down, the pirates. And they would fight and kill one another to get the little bits of bread and water that would be shoved through there. Sometimes they would be completely naked. And when one would die, they would pour this caustic acid over them to cleanse them. While all the time, the guards in the center, I could feel them, were taking great joy in this. They loved the abuse that they were putting on these pirates. Now, granted, the pirates were horrible men who were killing people, and, okay. Wow. Wow. Especially bad right here. Feels like I'm getting hit in the face kind of feeling.
Yeah. They were in very extreme situations here.
Oh, yeah.
So one of these holes were used to throw to the prisoners food.
Really?
Yeah.
My God.
And this place was full of prisoners. Just that they can't.
Yeah, they couldn't lay down or do anything.
Lay down, and they were naked in some times. So when they throw the food to the prisoners, it starts a fight.
Of course,
here
trying to eat
for
enough.
trying some 2 little pieces of bread. And when a prisoner died here, they throw hot water with coal to avoid infections between the other prisoners.
Yeah, this was a horrific area. I could feel all of it. I mean, not those specific things you said, not at all.
But I could feel the horror of the place.
But when we went into that center room that overlooked those, where the pirates were kept, they told me this story, and this is still going on today. There's a doll. Isn't there always a doll? There's a doll that is kept in that room, and every single morning that doll is missing, and it's somewhere else in the fortress. And nobody moves it. It just disappears and reappears somewhere else, supposedly. And it's the job of the new soldiers to go out and look for it and find it. The soldiers are not allowed in this particular tower after 6 p.m. at night because it is so haunted.
So, yes.
So these were for ventilation and
Yes.
this was for food?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, and some of these guards were not nice.
Yeah, so they had here a game with the youngest guards. They had a doll here,
They had what?
made of a doll, made
Doll?
of clouds. Yes, like a doll.
Oh, a doll.
A doll, yes.
When that guy.
Yes. They try to. The game is find the doll, because the doll suddenly disappear every night, and it was the doll is often discovered in many places, different places every day.
And this is back when this place was in use.
No, that is today.
Really?
Yes. That is a nowadays tradition between the soldiers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's a game. It's not.
Yeah, just a
haunting.
game.
It's not a haunted doll that's moving around by itself.
I think it is because they don't move the doll. They always keep the doll here, but the other day the doll appear in other place.
Okay.
And also, and often the doll appeared outside this tower, in other places among the fortress. So the soldiers are terrified. They are not allowed to enter this tower past 6 p.m. Yes.
I'd like to be there past 6 p.m. Now, when we went over to the Tower of the Kings, I didn't feel much at all. Very interesting. Very interesting. But I didn't feel much. The truth is, though, think about this. In that residential case, it wasn't the devil. It wasn't the fear that they thought it was. It was their father. It was a workman who died. It was another woman. But nothing horrifying. Nobody had been hurt. Don't let your fears take over. Sometimes the experience isn't nearly as bad as what you think it is. I'm looking forward to sharing my next story with you. I think the next one we're going to do is on Project Blue Book. We've got some secret documents, and I want to get Dalton Harrell and Sam Torville, who's the head of our new extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional department of study, and we're going to have them join me, and we'll do a nice program for you there. I want to thank you again for supporting us. Your support means more to me than you could possibly know. It's all to help others. God bless you for that. We'll talk to you soon.